Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and we're going to provide an update to the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. As of this week, the week of March 3rd, we are now looking at the 20-week SMA coming at around 44.1K, the 21-week EMA at around 44.9, actually close to 45. So really ranges between 44 to 45K, which I mean, again, like it sounds somewhat absurd because that's like a full $20,000 almost below the current price. Is it not? Right? I mean, we're almost at 64K and the 20-week SMA is at 44K. So we're legitimately above it by about $20,000. And beyond that, the extension from it, right, is certainly has certainly continued to go up, right? If we just look at it from last week, we were about 50% extended. So it has certainly been getting somewhat extended there. If you were to take a look at, say, the short-term bubble risk, which again is the extension from the 20-week moving average, right? You can see that we've actually exceeded the two extensions from March of 2023 and from December of 2023. Right, so this local top there on or at least so far, right, the extension from the 20-week SMA took us all the way up to about 50% above it, right? And again, if you roll back the clock, we haven't been this far extended from the 20-week SMA really since April of 2021, right? It's been a long time since we've seen that sort of that full extension go above, really, I guess, go above, 42% or so, right? So certainly things are more heated now in terms of extension from the 20-week moving average since they've really been since April of 2021. And so I wanted to sort of touch base on how long has it been since we even checked in with the 20-week moving average. We've talked a lot about that, about how you typically go check in with it every few months. If you go longer than a few months, the odds that you hold it whenever you test it in the sort of the nebulous future aren't as great. It doesn't mean that it can't happen, but looking at where it is right now, we're currently at about 20 weeks, right? And previously, in this part of the trend over here, we were testing it every, this was 8 weeks. Here it was about 11 weeks, and then here it was after, about 8 weeks again. We were testing it every 2 to 3 months. Now, right, we're going on about 5 months now. The last time we tested it was actually back in October. And so it's always worthwhile to sort of go compare to prior instances of it and kind of how long has it, had it been. And, first thing you could look at is maybe the 2015, 2016, 2017 bull market and see that from there were some periods where we went about 15 weeks or so. Here's another example of about 10 weeks. Here's an example where it took about 12, right? But they're all in that like 3 to 4 month range, right? 3 to 4 month range. And then eventually you got to move here that took 15 weeks, right? Still about 4 months or so. And then another one that took about 8 weeks. And then finally you had one that took 18 weeks, right? So once it went beyond like that 4 month time frame, and then when we back tested or when we retested it, we just were unable to hold it, right? As we got more and more parabolic. And again, the same thing in 2019, right? Like we didn't test it really at all. And when we finally did test it, it was 24 weeks later. I mean, that's quite a long time. I mean, you're talking about half a year, right? I mean, that was a long time to go, 24 weeks, which by the way is still, if you look at what happened right here when we left the 20-week moving average in September of 2020, it took 33 weeks, which was even longer than the 2019 rallies, right? So you had 24 weeks there before going back to the 20-week. Here you had 33 weeks. And as a reminder, we're currently, right now, we are at 20 weeks, right? In this case, while it took 24 weeks to get back to it, we actually topped out after only 12. In this case, while it took 33 weeks to get back to it, we topped out after around 29. So it just gives you an idea, right? It gives you an idea of what we've historically seen with a 20-week moving average, and what sort of that implies for sort of the nebulous future, whenever that may be. Remember, in 2021, we stayed extended above the 20-week SMA for months before we finally cooled off, right? And so that's why I just want to continue to remind ourselves that at some point we'll have to check back in with it, and the longer it takes to check back in with it, perhaps it'll just make the task that much more difficult, right? Of holding, if we just simply haven't tested it in a longer period of time. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean like doom. Over here, once we failed to hold it, we ended up coming right back up. But it is just something to think about, right? Like, it has been about 20 weeks. We've been following it more or less every week or so. It's been 20 weeks now. Maybe you could argue we're still in the window. That it's not that, it's still not too far out. But the problem is that even when this stuff, as it plays out, it can take weeks and weeks and weeks to sort of to get back down to those levels. So that's something to think about. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see what Bitcoin can do here. You can see it is actually pretty close to the highs. It's still, I don't think it has taken out. It hasn't taken out this first peak over here. Still hasn't taken out that one yet. In terms of thinking about like what ETH Bitcoin did back during the merge rally, remember, it took out the first peak. Didn't take out the second one, but at least did take out the first one going back into the merge rally. And we've talked a lot about, dominance of Bitcoin and alt Bitcoin pairs, and how liquidity flows from the altcoin market over to Bitcoin, and that liquidity from alts is like fuel for Bitcoin. At some point, alt Bitcoin pairs break down, and they don't necessarily provide as much fuel to Bitcoin. But we are coming into these higher levels that we had back in 2021. This sort of provided us with a wall. And we'll see the reaction by Bitcoin. And I think it's funny that it's as Bitcoin approaches the highs, dominance approaches potentially 56%, which is the level we talked about for a long time. ETH Bitcoin could be going back down to the range lows that are on 0.049. Alt Bitcoin pairs continuing to slowly bleed. So it just seems like a lot of things are potentially playing out, and worthwhile to keep an eye on. So again, in order for us to even get back to the 20-week SMA right now, it would, Bitcoin would have to drop quite a bit. I do think the short-term bubble risk chart is a great way to sort of visualize the extension from it, and kind of also see what's possible, right? Like, to see how high we went in 2019 and 2021 and 2017, right? Just kind of see how high those extensions ultimately went before Bitcoin eventually faded back to the downside. And we could always pull up other moving averages as well. Typically, if we're going to do that, it makes more sense to maybe go over to some of the daily moving averages. Like, you got like the 100-day moving average. We talked a lot about this kind of emulating essentially the move from a year before, right? Where we had this 20% correction into the 100-day moving average. Right, that's essentially what happened back over there. A 21% drop into the 100-day, and then a pop up into new highs. Right, this was the same thing, right? About a 21% drop into that 100-day moving average, and then you get sort of this first impulsive move, and then it goes sideways, and then you get another move up after that. Right, you get this impulsive move, and then it goes sideways, and then you get another move up after that, which is arguably the move that we're currently in. But again, like, that is playing out almost identically to what it did over there. And once it hit the 100-day, right, from that point, it ultimately rallied about 58% from this low, right? Bitcoin has gone up a little bit more, right? It's actually gone up about 64%. But again, a very similar pattern when you look at that the 100-day moving average. The 200-day we haven't even visited since we left the bull market support band really in October. So that's still much further down. There's the 50-day, which our relationship with the 50 days is quite a bit different, and it than the 100-day, and very similar patterns, right? We sort of get these drops below it, like these 15, 10, 15. These are all 15% drops. Here it was about a 10% drop, maybe 11% drop, and then just rallied on back up. So the 50-day SMA right now is at around 48K. right? Which again, that would actually correspond also getting close to where the bull market support band is. Right? Again, the bull market support band is all the way at 44, but it's not too far away from it. But anyways, that's where we are right now with Bitcoin. We obviously threw in a touch of Bitcoin dominance and alt Bitcoin pairs and ETH Bitcoin because all that's relevant and I think provides fuel, provides liquidity for Bitcoin, and I think the thing to look for is, do those things, do alt Bitcoin pairs break down? Does Bitcoin dominance break out? Does ETH Bitcoin break down? We've talked about this forever, how it's these Bitcoin rallies that break those things down. And that's exactly what we've seen, over the last year and a half or so. So we'll see, we'll see if that continues. Anyways, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. And again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We have a website with, thousands of different crypto charts, macro charts, charts for equities, etc. So make sure you guys check that out. Links in the description below and the pinned comment. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.